My manager took full credit for my project and snickered, no one cares who did the work. But when the board of directors called me in for an urgent discussion, his face turned pale with fear. Let me tell you a story that took nearly a year of my life, cost me sleep, made me question my sanity, but in the end proved that justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears a cheap department store tie and sweats like hell under fluorescent lights. This happened in Chicago. I worked for a mid-size logistics software company headquartered near the Loop. Let's just call it Pronetics. I was a senior systems analyst. I wasn't flashy, I didn't play golf with the executives. I didn't wear $400 shoes or snort confidence powder in the restroom before meetings. I just did my job quietly, thoroughly. I was also one of the very few who actually understood the back end of our legacy systems. Everyone else either moved on or got promoted far away from the code. I stayed close to it because I liked solving problems, and I was damn good at it. That's why I was chosen, unofficially, of course, to lead what they called the Vision Bridge project. It was supposed to modernize our entire freight tracking system, integrate real-time data, and bring predictive analytics to the front end. Think of it like giving a 1998 Toyota Corolla the brain of a Tesla. It was ambitious, complex, and I pulled it off, well, most of it. Enter Martin, my direct manager. A man whose job could be best summarized as attending meetings and paraphrasing other people's work in a more confident voice. Martin couldn't tell you the difference between JavaScript and Java. He couldn't find the Git repo without me emailing him the link twice. But what he could do was walk fast, talk louder than everyone else, and laugh like a man who always expected applause. When the Vision Bridge prototype was ready for presentation, he told me, "Hey, just shoot me the slides. I'll take it from here." I hesitated. He followed it up with a grin and said, "No one cares who did the work, man. Just who presents it." And then he snickered, "That damn sound still plays in my head." The presentation, he presented it to the board, my work, my late nights, my algorithms, my design. I was left out of the room for space reasons. That was the excuse. I watched the whole thing on a laggy Zoom stream from a small conference room down the hall. Every line he uttered was something I had written in the original spec. Every clever feature he introduced had been tested on my dev server. He even demoed the UI I built over the holidays while I was at my parents' place in Wisconsin, fixing bugs at 2 a.m. because our new hire had broken the database schema. And you know what he got at the end of the presentation? A standing ovation, an actual standing ovation. After the meeting, I walked past him in the hallway. He was shaking hands with the CTO, laughing, saying things like, "Yeah, it just came to me how we could streamline the sync protocol using async I/O logic, which, if you know anything about how our system was built, makes no damn sense." I stood there. He saw me, gave me a wink, then turned back to the crowd and said, "Let's just say inspiration hit me hard." I thought about quitting for days. I came home that night and just stared at the wall for 3 hours, didn't even take off my coat. My wife found me like that. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said, and that was it. But I didn't quit. I documented everything, every Git commit, every Slack conversation, every version spec doc with my name in the metadata, every timestamp push, every bug ticket I closed. I created a folder called insurance and synced it to 2 different clouds and an encrypted flash drive I kept in my glove compartment. Then I waited. 2 weeks later, Martin was promoted to director of product. Vision Bridge was going into full production. They were building an entire team around it, my project. He invited me into his office, now with a corner view, and told me I was being reassigned to infrastructure optimization, basically, script monkey work. I asked him why. He leaned back, hands behind his head, and said, "You're too valuable where you are. You make stuff work. I make things happen." And then he chuckled again, that snicker I wanted to punch through the glass wall behind him. Then, out of nowhere, I got an email, subject, urgent, your presence requested by board of directors, confidential. It came from the assistant to the board chair. At first, I thought I was being laid off, maybe Martin was doing a clean sweep. But when I walked into the meeting room, things felt different. It wasn't a firing squad, it was tense, curious. "Take a seat," said Miss Bellamy, the chairwoman. "We've got questions about Vision Bridge." Apparently, Martin had been tapped to lead a pitch to potential investors, a pre-IPO funding round. Only the investors had real software people, and they asked technical questions. Martin gave them buzzwords, confused ones. Real-time asynchronous batch syncing with front-end memory hooks was one of his gems. They weren't impressed. They wanted to talk to whoever built the damn thing. So here I was. I explained everything carefully, step by step, from infrastructure to implementation, architecture to dev tools. I showed diagrams. I logged into Git. I answered every question correctly. By the end of the session, Miss Bellamy nodded and said, "That's all we needed to hear." I thought that was it, but then came the follow-up, the audit. A week later, HR started quietly poking around, then legal, then compliance. They did a full project audit. Martin, of course, panicked. I know this because he called me. He actually had the balls to ask me to cover for him. I just didn't think they'd ask so many questions. "Can we just smooth this out?" I said. "You told me no one cares who did the work, so let's test that," and I hung up. The fallout, Martin was put on administrative leave pending investigation. Eventually, he resigned to pursue other opportunities. The internal memo was bland, sterile, but everyone knew. The day after his departure, the CTO stopped by my cubicle. He said just one sentence, "We should have been paying more attention." Then he offered me Martin's job. I declined. Instead, I asked for full ownership of Vision Bridge, the ability to build my own team, and direct reporting to the CTO, no middleman. They agreed. And Martin? Last I heard, he's trying to get into consulting. Good luck selling buzzwords with no backup. Me? I'm still here, still quiet, still doing the work. But now they know who I am. They thought I'd lay down. I dug deeper. So now I'm in the so-called research role, no team, no access to the systems I built, no meetings on Vision Bridge. They parked me in a quiet corner office with a dusty PC that takes 5 minutes to boot. It was punishment dressed as promotion. They figured I'd go quietly, maybe quit on my own, save them the hassle. I've seen that playbook before. But they made one mistake, they left me connected. While I was reorganizing my responsibilities, I had full access to the internal knowledge base, documentation servers, and project wikis. And buried in the corporate wiki was a shared folder labeled Partnership Noval Logistics. That was the vendor Marissa brought in, the one with Martin behind the curtain. The docs were thin, only sanitized meeting notes and vague roadmaps. But one file caught my eye, Nalor Licensing Encore Agreement v3 Final Draft. At the docs inside, a buried clause stated that Noval would retain co-ownership of any features added post-integration, and those features included parts of Vision Bridge's adaptive routing engine, that was my IP, built before Noval even existed. Which meant if they got it approved, they'd quietly own parts of Vision Bridge. You can click on Share and More to see if there is a part 2. Without ever writing a single line of code, that's when I knew this wasn't just sabotage, this was a takeover. The spy in the system. I needed more, so I turned to the one guy they forgot about, Joshua. He was the night shift IT guy, quiet, awkward, loved coffee more than people. Most folks ignored him, but I always said hi. So when I showed up at 10 p.m. with a box of pastries and asked him a few friendly questions about weird vendor access logs, he didn't ask why. He just pulled up the server access charts, and there it was, a steady pattern of remote access from a Nova credential that didn't exist in the HR database. It logged in at odd hours, pulling config files, dependency chains, and test reports. I traced it. The trail ended in a co-working space in Milwaukee, same address Martin once used on a resume I'd seen years ago. He was feeding off the system like a parasite, and nobody noticed. I made a copy of everything. Server logs, vendor access, licensing clauses, Slack archives, even the calendar invites that linked Marissa and Martin to the same consulting breakfasts in Milwaukee every third Thursday. All were timestamped and stored on an encrypted drive hidden in plain sight in my backup phone case. Then I waited. And right when things seemed like they couldn't go deeper, they did. A new face appeared. They hired a new VP of product, young, sharp suit, Ivy League accent, went by Gavin. I knew his type. On his second day, he held a company-wide town hall with slick slides, saying he wanted to take Vision Bridge in a bold new direction. When I heard that, my stomach dropped. Vision Bridge wasn't just a product to them anymore, it was a sellable asset. That's when I found out Nova had offered to buy Vision Bridge outright. The plan was to fold it into their platform, then license it back to Prick as part of a strategic alignment. It would look good on paper, and no one on the board had the technical know-how to understand what they were giving away. But Gavin did. He wasn't just some random VP, he used to work for Nova. It was right there on his LinkedIn, buried under a consulting fellowship he listed as a sabbatical. The whole thing was staged, Martin, Marissa, Gavin. This wasn't a collaboration, it was a coup. The final straw was when the board approved the sale of Vision Bridge to Nova. I found out through a mass email, no meeting, no heads up, just we're excited to announce a new phase in our product journey. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I sat there in my sad little corner office, looking at the screen, thinking they really think they've won. They took my work, my people, my sister Sai, but they forgot who built it because I never gave up. One thing, control. One last trick. You see, when you design a system from scratch, you build in fail-safes, guardrails, watchdogs. I didn't give them the real dynamic routing model. What they had was an earlier version, still good, still flashy, but missing the adaptive layer I built myself. The one that used real-time freight data and forecasted logistics with 93% accuracy. That piece lived in a module called Vision Core, and Vision Core was only referenced in the main codebase. It wasn't in their demo builds, it wasn't in Nova's fork, and it was never pushed to the main production environment because it required a license key, a key only I knew. And now they were trying to sell a car without the engine. The room went silent when I said his name. 2 days after the sale announcement, the company threw a celebration event in the main conference hall, streamers, finger food, cheap champagne. I stood in the back, arms crossed, watching people toast the work they didn't do, listening to Gavin spin words like visionary and breakthrough. They handed him the mic, he grinned like a politician and said, "What we've built with Vision Bridge will change the logistics industry forever, and thanks to our new partnership with Nova, we reach even greater heights." Applause. I waited for him to say my name, he didn't. Instead, he waved at the board and said, "Let's raise a glass to bold decisions and smarter futures." More applause. I'd had enough. The confrontation. I stepped forward, calm, controlled. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "I've got a quick story," I said. The room quieted, some people turned. Gavin smiled nervously, unsure if this was part of the program. "A few years ago, I stayed up late every night writing the first lines of what became Vision Bridge. No budget, no team, no backup, just an idea and a lot of coffee." Nervous laughter. I looked straight at Gavin. "I wrote Vision Core, the module that powers the entire predictive system. But here's the twist, what you just sold to Nova doesn't include it." You could feel the temperature shift. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a USB drive. It was already connected to the projection laptop. The screen flickered, code appeared. A diagnostic panel showed Vision Bridge Core module missing, license key required. I turned to the board, "That's the real product. Everything else is a show demo. It won't scale, it won't adapt, it'll fail under load in less than 60 days. Murmurs, confused whispers. Then I said the name, Martin Evans. The room froze. He's been running Nover's shadow contracts. He inserted a ghost admin, tried to claim Vision Core through a fake co-ownership clause. Marissa helped, so did Gavin. Gasps. One of the junior devs whispered, holy crap. I turned to Miss Bammy, the board chair, you trusted the wrong people, and they almost sold you a shell. But you forgot one thing. I held up the license key, I still own this. Immediate aftermath. Gavin stammered, let's not do this, this isn't the place. Miss Bellamy cut him off, sit down. Marissa, who had apparently been invited to the party, quietly backed out the door. Gavin's face was red, a vein popped near his temple. This is just a stunt, legal will sort this out. Already did, I said. My lawyer sent the IP ownership claim this morning, timestamped source code, Git history, NDA records, the real ones. That's when Gavin lost it. You think you're a hero? You're just some bitter middle-aged code monkey who couldn't handle losing control. The whole room turned on him, even the CTO, who had stayed quiet, stood up and said, you're done, leave your badge. Security escorted him out. Fallout, the party ended fast. People lingered, stunned. Some came up to me, shaking my hand, others looked ashamed, like they'd clapped for a lie and didn't know how to take it back. Miss Bellamy stayed behind after everyone left. I should have seen this sooner, she said quietly. I nodded, you weren't looking. She sighed, we'll clean this up, but the board is going to ask you to stay. They'll want you to rebuild. I looked at her, I'm not rebuilding, not here. Reflection, in the days that followed, the fallout spread. Martin disappeared from LinkedIn, Nover's website removed all mentions of next-gen integration. Marissa posted some passive-aggressive nonsense about new beginnings. Gavin was blacklisted fast. The company offered me a blank check to stay, I turned it down. I took Vision Core and incorporated it under a new name, signing a quiet deal with one of Prick's competitors on my terms. But the victory didn't feel like I thought it would. Some things don't get fixed. Louise, my best friend, had already taken another job, he couldn't trust the environment anymore. I didn't blame him. Half the board pretended they always had my back, the rest just stayed silent. I started getting calls from podcasts, tech magazines, everyone wanted the story. I turned most of them down. I didn't want to be famous, I just wanted to be free. Final words, what did I learn? Sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness. Being good at your job isn't enough. When people show you who they are, believe them. I'm not bitter, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just aware and a little more careful. People say revenge is best served cold, but sometimes it's best served with receipts.